In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Realtree has always had a connection to the fishing industry and the outdoor lifestyle. In 2016, Realtree expanded on the traditional business of creating the world's most effective camouflage patterns to create a fishing brand and family of patterns designed to connect the woods to the water and strengthen the bond between the two worlds. We couldn't be more excited to be working with the industry's top brands, retailers, and anglers to continue our growth, and we hope that you will join us. Enjoy Realtree fishing patterns inshore, offshore, on the lake, or at the dock. Learn more about the extensive line Realtree fishing patterns, apparel, gear, and more at Realtree.com.
Hey, do y'all like fishing for prizes? Maybe a trip to Costa Rica or a once-in-a-lifetime African safari? Well, the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo is back. Thanks to the hard work of Visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Trilogy Outdoors Media, this once popular event is back and is bigger and better than ever. This event is comprised of 12 monthly competitions that culminate in November with our annual banquet and expo, the celebration of fishing on the Grand Strand. New to this event is the freshwater division that will help include all of our anglers that live and visit the Grand Strand throughout the year. Monthly species winners will receive great prize packages from Bass Pro Shop and Surf Signs and Designs. But most importantly, they will receive an invite for them and a guest to our annual banquet and an entry in the grand prize drawing. So whether you fish the rivers, a pond, the pier, the surf, or a boat, you have a chance to win the grand prizes. To get signed up or for additional information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com and click on event. Also, you can visit any of our weigh stations and registration stations to get signed up as well. Thanks to our wonderful sponsors, South Atlantic Bank, Surf Signs and Designs, Bass Pro Shops, Trilogy Outdoors Media, Visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and many more. Best of luck to everyone, and we'll see you at the scale.
Trilogy Outdoors.
All right, folks, welcome back to Trilogy Outdoors Podcast, and this week we're going to have a rebuttal.
Yeah, we are.
Would I be saying that correct?
Yeah,
Counselor?
okay. The rebuttal to the defense. That would be the prosecution on the Murdaugh case. We're going to talk to the chief prosecutor of the state. That would be the Attorney General, Alan Wilson. And
a good friend of yours as well. And also, I might add that he is also in the Armed Reserve, or is he in the Air Force Reserve?
He's Army Guard.
Army Guard, okay.
Yep.
All right there with you.
Yep.
Now, he's been deployed a couple times.
Yeah, I think he's done Iraq and Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken.
Man, I have heard some stories. We'll have to talk about that. Yeah, sure. Before we get him on, we'll talk about it. Yeah. But I've heard some stories of some guys who were with him, who were actually in his group when they went over. Mm-hmm. So every week we love trying to advertise, and we love trying to bring new sponsors into the podcast.
Yeah, we told everybody a couple weeks ago, I think, that we were going to be getting some new sponsors, and that has come to fruition.
Yep, and I started a couple weeks ago on this product from Healthy Cell, and I just want to say, you met the owner of Healthy Cell down in Charleston at an event, and he brought it to your attention and talked to you about it, correct?
I did. I talked to Doug maybe about a month ago, the owner, CEO, founder of Healthy Cell, and he told me what he was trying to accomplish in the outdoor space, and I thought that was real creative. They're trying to bring products to the outdoor space that sort of focus on, I guess, endurance, athleticism, hydration in that athletic outdoor field. So think high altitude hiking, think offshore fishing all day long, and you're sweating your tail off 12 hours a day in the middle of the summer. And he wanted to get into that outdoor space, and so they've developed some products that are, honestly, English, between you and I'm not a big fan of what I would call snake oil.
Right.
I mean, I take products because I like to work out. I'm a big fitness.
You are a big fitness buff in that, exactly.
Right. I don't always eat right, but I love to work out. And so, I take a pre-workout every morning before I work out. I take a post-workout, which is a hydration
Yep.
supplement, and I take a creatine, okay? And I take BCAAs as well, like through the day if I just want something to sip on. But I'm not big into like snake oil beyond that, all the various products and just crap that's out there. And so, I'm a little bit reluctant about this stuff. But anyway, he gave me a big sample box to try. And mine's focusing, what's it called?
On Focus and Recall.
Focus and Recall, right.
Yeah, yours is perfect because when I talked to Tara, who we've been working with, Miss Tara from over at Healthy Cell, the marketing director, I told her exactly what your lifestyle is. It is workout, and work.
Yeah.
And she said, I've got it. Focus and Recall.
Yeah.
And, I think she mentioned, I told her that you had recently gotten over a little bit of an addiction to the energy drinks. As you're
I may be drinking one now.
You may be drinking one.
I may be drinking one now.
And I told her that you did say that, after you worked out, you normally did have one or before work. So she picked out the item, Focus and Recall, that they have.
Yeah.
And, I'm anxious to hear, how it's been affecting you. I know you've only had about a week to take it because you got yours late.
Yeah, I have. I've been, 5, 6, 7 doses so far. And, absolutely loving this stuff, honestly. One of the problems I have is after I have a pre-workout, I love pre-workout because I work out a lot, but after a pre-workout, you always get that crash. And I intermittent fast in the morning as well. So you really get a crash after you have high caffeine type stuff with a pre-workout. I take this Focus and Recall with my pre-workout. I don't get that crash, got a little bit of caffeine in it.
Yep.
And it gives you that clear head. You don't get that fuzzy head. You're able to focus all day long. I like it. I mean, it's not snake oil. It's not it's not tiger balls.
The science behind it is awesome.
Right. It's not rhino horn. It's not tiger balls. I mean, it's good stuff. It's good. Yeah, it's good stuff. And I mean, you've got constant energy throughout the day. It's not like caffeine, where you're just slamming and crashing and slamming and crashing. So I've been very pleased with it. And I'm going to keep taking it, and I'm going to report back to everybody how.
And the taste is not hideous.
No.
I mean, it's not.
Most of these products, the taste is very.
You got to mix them with something.
Very
blend
bad.
them. Very,
very bad. And you can blend this with it, but it's just a packet it's a gel. It's a gel, and you squeeze it, down it, and it's done. So
one
easy to take, easy to pack. I like it.
Kim bought me. Of course, I'm older than you. Kim started buying me about when I was 45. When she decided she wanted to keep me around for a while. She started buying me the daily supplements and everything else.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to tell you that some of those pills, I look at them and go, all right, I'm going to get ready to give myself the Heimlich maneuver. I mean, they're god awful huge. But this, with the gel that it is, it's so easy. I pop the top on it, take it, and I'll tell you, I'm doing the bioactive. And, mine is to replace things that I missed during the day because of the extended treatment that I took for Mycobacterium marinum, which was a mixture of erythromycin daily and rifampin, which is the drug to treat tuberculosis.
Yeah.
It has a very, very terrible effect on your digestive tract.
Yeah.
And my appetite is just not there. So I told her, I said, I want to try and gain weight, and I want to do it I don't want to do it by drinking Miller Lite or Bud Light or anything like that. I want to do it the right way.
Yep.
And I tell you, I have enjoyed it. And the things that I've felt from mine are this. I take it in the morning, and generally I don't eat lunch. Generally, I'll eat a snack and then skip and then eat something big for dinner. But I found myself several times now needing and making myself have to go to Judy Boone's, have to go somewhere and eat a big meal. Mm-hmm. The other thing is I've had no, you get a lot of gas with some of these things. You get a lot of indigestion with some of these things. I've had no effects, no issues with that at all. And again, the flavor on mine is not bad at all. It's easy. I pop the top on it, gel. I do it, and then I'll drink a cup of water right behind it. But thanks to the science behind this, our bodies absorb it so much quicker. They really do. And I'll tell you, if you go to healthysale.com and check it out, you can find out a lot more. They're scientists and can explain it a lot better. But really cool deal going on for the next month. You can get your initial order. If you want to get in on one of these and try these for the family, get a couple. You can go to healthysale.com/trilogy, and you'll see a place for the order there. And if you put in trilogy in your promo code, you're going to get 20% off your first order. That's 20% off. It's saving you a good bit of money to get this and try it. Like I said, if you want to try it in your household, you and your wife, or you and your husband, it's a great opportunity. So all you got to do is go to healthysale.com/trilogy, and when you get to your order, go through, pick out whatever you want, whether it's Focus and Recall, Bioactive, and go through, put your discount code in, capital T, capital R, capital I, capital L, capital O, capital G, capital Y, Trilogy. Put it in and get that 20% off and get started on a better life. I mean, I honestly did it and wanted to do it and get ready for turkey season.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Which for me is going to come sooner than you, honey.
Yeah, I know. Turkey season's coming, and really the prime time of offshore fishing is coming.
That's right.
And so I'd suggest getting ready for it. And one of the biggest things for me offshore is staying hydrated. And we're gonna.
You touched on exactly what I had in my conference call with them. We talked about the fishing, the tournament guys that fish all day long, the offshore fishing. We know we eat, and we normally eat a lot out there, but it's all snacks. It's all stuff that's not good for you unless you take the time and pack good stuff. Yep. But now with this, you're getting that, and I don't know with that Focus and Recall. I've not looked at yours, but is it something where you can take it twice a day? Or
I think it's a one gel pack a day for me.
One a day, okay.
But one of the things you always notice when you come in from offshore fishing all day long, your pee is almost brown. At least mine is. I have to intentionally slam water, just one after another, because if you go a couple hours and you forget, you're busy, you're catching fish.
Yep.
Your pee will turn that disgusting, almost brown, tea color. Your kidneys are just dying. Right?
Hey, guys, this is Trilogy Outdoors.
No, seriously. I mean,
Pins, fur, feathers, and urine.
You got to stay hydrated offshore. You've got to.
Yeah, you do.
I mean, because the next day, you feel it if you don't. That nasty headache, that nasty lower back feeling, a lot of that's because you don't drink enough water when you're offshore. And you don't get hydrated. You don't have all those, the potassium and the vitamins that you need. That is a big thing, and I'm telling you, the older you get, the worse it gets, and you gotta stay on it.
You and I aren't big drinkers on the boat. You're not a big drinker anyway, but you and I aren't big drinkers on the boat at all. But I watch people on the boat start opening that first beer offshore at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've seen them eat a couple snacks throughout the day and continue to drink that beer. And you're right, dehydration, not switching water into there. I just think that this extended, I think this for a day on the water, I want to hear people try it. I want people to try it and give us their feedback. I mean, we're going to give you ours, at least for the next 4 weeks, you're going to hear our feedback. We want to hear yours as well, and you can do that if you just go to TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com and click on the contact link there and shoot us an email. Tell us what you think of it. Maybe you're already on it already. But shoot us an email and let us know. Now, we've got a guest, and our guest is lined up. We want to talk to him. And again, last week, we want to thank Senator Dick Harpootlian for joining us. We had a lot of conversation throughout the week. With other people about the show. They thought he did a great job. They thought he answered questions that were fair to all parties. Yeah. And they thought he was really informative. This week, we get to hear the other side of it. And other people were like, well, how are you going to, how was it to talk to the loser? And that's another thing in court. If you look at it like that, was there really a winner and a loser in that trial?
Well, certainly Alec Murdaugh would have to be the loser in the trial, but I don't know if Dick came out the loser, honestly.
Nope.
No. Let's get Alan on and talk about it. He's ready. So let me hit the.
That sounds great.
Let me hit him up here.
All right, folks, we're not going to pause. We're just going to leave you right through the phone call.
Roll you right through?
Roll you right through the phone call. There we go. By the way, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and share.
Hey, General.
Hey, man. How you doing, Senator?
I'm good.
Hey, Alan.
I've got English Glover with me here, Captain E.
Inglis? Hey, how you?
I'm doing wonderful, my friend.
Yeah, I'm glad you joined us. I'm going to do a quick introduction for you. I don't know if you need an introduction. But
No, he doesn't.
You probably don't, but we're going to give you an introduction anyway. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got Attorney General Alan Wilson. Alan, you first ran in, 2010?
That's correct.
Yeah, ran in 2010, became our Attorney General, and has done a heck of a job since then. Been with us for going on 13 years now, and have had some really, really big cases, including the SRS case, I guess, has got to be the biggest civil case the state has ever had. That's the Savannah River site case.
Oh, yeah.
That produced, $500 million for the state?
That's correct.
Yeah, $500 million for the state.
Good job.
And now got to be the biggest criminal case to have ever been in the state, at least the biggest, most notorious, maybe, right word? Probably biggest, I can't say the best, certainly the most notorious criminal case we've ever had in the state, or at least one of them, and that would be the Alec Murdaugh case. And you participated in that not only as the administrator, the executive of that office, but you also participated in the trial, and I thought that was super cool because a lot of times, solicitors, attorney generals don't get their hands dirty. And every time I tuned in to look, I saw you sitting right there, and you actually did some of the argument too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did. I took the closing witness for the state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. Like I said, a lot of guys just don't do that, right? I mean, you're sort of the boss and administering everything else. So super cool that you jumped in and got your hands dirty. And we had our friend Dick Harpootlian on, Senator Harpootlian on last week to sort of talk about his side of the story, and that was interesting. But I told him, I said, look, I appreciate your arguments, and they're good arguments. I appreciate your arguments. You're a great lawyer. He's a great lawyer, but I want to hear the other side of this story, and I'd like to get my friend Alan Wilson on. And he said Alan's gonna do a great job too, but he's gonna tell you, the errors that were made. He said the errors that were made were harmless errors, if there were errors made at all. And he specifically mentioned a couple. And at some point, Alan, I'd like for you to address these if you could. But he specifically said that at some point in time, Creighton mentioned, and I can't remember what point. It must have been closing argument. I don't know when, but he said Creighton mentioned that Alec was asked why he didn't say that he was at the dog kennels to begin with, right? The lie, the big, I guess you could call that the big
lie.
The big lie, right?
Yep.
And Dick's perception of that was that's a Fifth Amendment right. I mean, he was already in custody at that point in time, and he has a Fifth Amendment right to not to incriminate himself. And so that was improper questioning. I guess that would have been on cross of Alec is when that would have happened. And so he thinks that's a fatal flaw in the case. I don't know if you've thought through that. Have you had a chance to think through that with your legal team yet, and had it come up with a response to that?
Well, Stephen, let me start kind of at 50,000 feet and then drill down to your specific question.
Okay. Yeah.
Because y'all jumping like right into the meat of it. And that's
Yeah.
really good because as an attorney, I mean, you know where to go. But I mean, you got a lot of people probably listening to this podcast that are probably just need me to bring it down.
You're right.
Please do.
Yeah, it was a lot of information. I mean, it was a 6-week trial, over 600 pieces of evidence. I calculated probably anywhere between 180 and 200 hours were spent in that courthouse for all of us and the jurors. And I talked to Senator Harpootlian a lot during the trial. And listen, he is a legendary attorney. Some people love him, some people hate him, but he was a prosecutor at one time, and then of course moved over to the defense bar. And I was talking to Dick during the trial, and I said, when I talk to laypersons, people who aren't lawyers or don't spend that much time into this business, I tell them the easiest way to describe the role of a prosecutor and the role of a criminal defense attorney. A prosecutor is in the construction business, and a criminal defense attorney is in the demolition business.
I like
We're
that.
trying to build. That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
We are trying to build something. We're building a case, like a contractor builds a house.
Yeah.
And the other side is trying to tear it down and create what we in the legal community call reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Because we have to exceed that doubt. We have to get over that hurdle to each and every juror. So, one of the things, we dealt with a lot of things that they threw at us. But what I'd like to tell people is that when the law enforcement folks arrive on the scene the night of the murder, or in any case, they are making split-second decisions in real time as they go. And for the last year and a half, that's what law enforcement has done. From the moment they showed up on the scene, when Alec came running up to that Deputy Green with the Carlton County Sheriff's Office, all the way to he took the stand, law enforcement has been making split-second decisions. And in order for there to be a second guesser, and that is the defense attorney and all the critics on social media and online, there has to be a first guesser, the person who's making the first guess, and it's being made by a human being. Now, the burden is on the state, always on the state, and it's a burden we welcome. But at the same time, when you go on and you put law enforcement basically on trial, which is what most defense attorneys do, they try to put the people who were there at the time, and they put them on trial, not the defendant on trial. And they're doing that to try to demolish the state's theory and the state's case. And that's kind of what this is. Now, what I tell people is Alec Murdaugh, when you look at it, from the moment he called 911, when he happened upon his wife and his son, the first thing he's saying to the 911 operator is, I was gone for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I come back and, I'm paraphrasing, of course, and I found them like this. Okay. And then the sled comes up with the Carlton County. When they arrive, he says the same story again. And then he says the same thing to sled later that night. Then he says the same thing to sled 3 days later. And then when he comes up, he was never a target. He was never a defendant at that time. He was, if anything, a victim, someone that people were feeling bad for. And of course, when he was making all these statements and he decided to take the stand, he doesn't have to take the stand. He's not being compelled to take the stand in his own case. But when he makes an assertion, when he changes his story from I was never there to I was there, but ... the state is allowed to challenge his credibility. He has put his credibility at issue. And for those who watch this trial, know that Judge Newman, who in my opinion is the gold standard for judges, he was very meticulous and very balanced in how he gave every side an opportunity to object, and when necessary, remove the jury from the discussion so that these assertions from both sides could be made under the law. And then he made sound judgments and protected the record. And so, obviously Senator Harpootlian and I, we took different positions in the trial, and we often take different positions politically. I respect what he's trying to do. He and I just see this differently. I believe that Alec Murdaugh put his credibility on the line when he took the stand, and the state basically tore his credibility apart because he changed his story after a year and a half.
Yeah, I've tried murder cases before, and there's always a pivot point or a linchpin where it's time to make that choice for the defendant to go on the stand or not to go on the stand. And every time it seems there's a little bit different. There's a little bit different analysis, but it's always a risk, right? I mean, it's always a risk because the minute you put that person up there, he really wants to explain what happened. He wants to face the jury. He wants the jury to look him in the eye and determine if he's, telling the truth or telling a lie. But, the second half of that analysis is how badly is the prosecutor going to make you look? And inevitably that happens, right? I mean, it's bound to happen. They've got the right to cross-examine them. And so it is a tough call for a defense attorney and the defendant to get on that stand. But when you do, it oftentimes goes bad for you. And I think, clearly went bad for Alec in this case.
Hey, Stephen, if I could throw one thing out there, since
Sure.
we're talking about that.
Sure.
You know, I listened to him as he was on the stand for a day and a half. And if you recall, and for people who paid attention to the timeline, obviously, and I'll go over it very quickly, from 8:40 to 8:44, Paul and his friend Rogan are on the phone talking about the dog. Rogan's dog is at that kennel. They attempt to do a FaceTime call so that Rogan can look at the dog's tail to determine if the tail has been injured. And they're not able to do a FaceTime, so he asked Paul to make a video. Mm-hmm. Paul makes a 50-second video. That's the infamous kennel video that everyone's talking about. That is on Paul's phone and is not uncovered by law enforcement until the following April, I believe. So like 10, 11, 9, 10 months later, that video is not known to the world. It was only known to Paul. And that's why Alec, obviously committed himself to, I was never there.
Right.
But that video ends at 8:45 and 45 seconds when Alec was on the stand after he changed his story that, yes, I was there. But we were able to say, well, how long, I was getting a bird out of a dog's mouth. How long did that take from when that video ended? Oh, he said 10, 15 seconds, which obviously we think would have taken longer. But that puts him there at 8:46. And then the question was asked, okay, what'd you do with it then? Well, I walked over to the feed room. I put the bird up, which they found the dead bird when the police got there later that night. And then I went and got on the golf cart and drove back to the house. Did you say anything to Paul and Maggie? And he really couldn't say what he said to them, but he said goodbye. And he was asked, well, how long did that take you? He goes, about a minute. So he was there at 8:47 by his own admission. 8:47. We were able to determine, and I'm happy to go into this if you want me to, but we were able to determine that Paul and Maggie, the murders began somewhere between 8:49 and 1 second and 8:49 and 35 seconds. Somewhere in that 34-second window. So 2 minutes before or 2 minutes after Alec finally admits that he left to go take his little quick nap is when his family was murdered. The one thing that he never said in a day and a half on the stand is, if only I had been there longer. Imagine your family is brutally murdered 2 minutes after you leave your house. You would have survivor's guilt. You would be like, if I had only stayed, I could have been there. That never came out of his mouth. It never dawned on him to say that to the world or even to the jury.
Yeah, and I think the timing is certainly the most damning piece of evidence there is. I mean, the lie is damning as well. I mean, the lie is sort of like, I tried to think of a way to explain this the other day, but it's sort of like, your wife cheats on you or your husband cheats on you. That is an indiscretion, but can you then go on to believe that your wife, your wife gets accused of bank robbery or homicide, God forbid. Can you forgive her for the indiscretion, the first indiscretion, and believe that she doesn't have another indiscretion in her? It's sort of like, I mean, once that well is tainted, it's very difficult to believe that person isn't capable of another indiscretion. You're always a little bit skeptical. That's just human nature, right? I mean, human nature is to believe that somebody's going to lie to you again if they've lied to you in the past. And when the jury heard, yeah, I lied, and then, the tangled web we weave. It's so difficult. Human nature does not let you move past that. But that's not that. I mean, as a defense attorney myself, having been a defense attorney myself in the past, and I do civil work too, but I sort of move myself past that, and I start thinking, okay, what's the motive? And this is where I, as a lawyer, get the most tangled up. Is I cannot figure out the motive, and I heard the prosecution's motive, and with all due respect to the prosecution, I mean, I just don't believe them. I just don't believe the motive. I can't come up with an explanation, and he's clearly guilty. I trust the sanctity of the jury, and the jury, has spoken and all that. I'll give you all those disclaimers, and y'all did a great job. But I still can't get past the motive of he's trying to cover up financial crimes. That's probably not the best way to summarize that.
If I may.
Sure, please.
It was never really about covering up the financial crimes. It was bigger than that. You have to go out and look at Alec Murdaugh. And again, the state doesn't have to prove motive, but we felt that we needed to at least share with the jury, kind of frame the days, weeks, months, and years leading up to this moment in time, to kind of frame it and provide context, because asking the jury to take the leap from happy-go-lucky guy one minute, bloodthirsty, brutal killer of his wife and son the next.
Yeah, it's hard, right? They need a little bit.
They need context.
Right.
So
yeah.
First off, the first thing I have to tell people, you don't have to go far in world history or even South Carolina history to find people who commit unthinkable, unconscionable acts of evil against their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
What drives a woman to roll her car into a lake with her toddler strapped in the back seat?
Yeah, horrible.
For a new boyfriend. There are people who are mentally ill. There are people who have psychotic snaps or episodes. There are people who, through drug abuse and other alcohol abuse, rot their brain, and it affects their judgment for a moment in time. I'm not saying any one of those things is what happened to Alec, but history is filled with people who do unthinkable, horrible, hateful acts of evil against loved ones. And that is what happened that night. Now, to your question, it wasn't just about Alec's financial crimes were about to be uncovered, or at least the process for uncovering them was about to start a few days later. You remember, this is a family. This is a guy who had basically traded on his family name since birth. The family had been around for over 100 years, 86 years of one family controlling the solicitor's office, 100 years in the law firm. They were staples, pillars of the community. They had power, they had privilege. And I'm not faulting them for being born into that type of life, but that was what they had. Alec Murdaugh was basically the crown prince of the Murdaugh family in that community. And he saw himself as such. All of that was about to go away. His way of life, how the world saw him, was about to go away. And if you recall, he was one step ahead of everyone for a decade. He had been stealing from people, not just clients, but law partners, friends for over 30 years. He was stealing from his own brother. He had been stealing and defrauding people and he was one step ahead. And it wasn't just about it wasn't about the money. It was about how he was perceived by the world. It was all coming to an end. And not only was it coming to an end, but he was standing to go to jail. And his way of life was gone. And so what I have told people is that I have no doubt that Alec Murdaugh loved his wife and son, at least in his own weird, warped way. But he loved himself more. And he was willing to murder them. That was the price he was willing to pay to preserve his way of life. And it wasn't just about the money. It was about everything. It was all going away. His entire existence as he knew it was about to cease. It was about to not exist anymore forever. And in a way, that was like a death to him.
So you're going with narcissistic sociopath is where you're going?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you remember, Creighton Waters dropped a term that we had actually studied up on. It was called the family annihilator. Mm-hmm. We couldn't obviously put that into evidence. It was not admissible. But the concept of a family annihilator, if you Google it, it was a study done in the 80s, and basically this is the profile of a person. It's a man in his 40s to 50s who murders his spouse and at least one child, suffers from either depression, drug abuse, or has paranoia issues, and even subsequently tries to commit suicide. These are actually elements of a family annihilator, and there are dozens, hundreds of examples of this in American history. Yeah. So he was a family annihilator. And
this is like an FBI analysis that has eventually come out. I mean, not on Alec, but I mean this is something that some psychologist in the FBI somewhere has said this pattern, this type of person exists in killers. What you're talking about? Well, family annihilator.
Yes. It's kind of like how you profile a serial killer or sociopath,
right,
or psychopath. Mm-hmm. It's not, you can't just go up and say, diagnose him as a family annihilator, but the profile it fits. There are people out there like Alec who have done this.
Yeah, the profile fits. I got you. And it probably does. I'm not familiar with that term. I haven't Googled it, and I will after this. But I have I don't know, almost visceral repulsion to the idea of killing your own child. And I can understand the age-old motive of killing your spouse. It's as sick as that is, but I mean that's an age-old motive, right? I mean everybody understands, a spouse that has committed adultery or whatever. People have been killing their own spouses for forever. Again, as horrible as that is, anything from domestic violence to indiscretion, you name it. But killing your own kid is a whole different level of sickness or whatever you want to call it, depravity. And I think there's just a repulsion, or there's a reluctance to believe that anybody has it in them unless they're truly sick. And certainly not trying to plant that seed anywhere, but it just seems like, God, what kind of a sick SOB can kill their own son, and not only kill him, but I mean kill him in a very violent, personal way.
Stephen, if I may,
yeah, please.
When I was a young prosecutor, an old prosecutor told me that DUIs were harder to get convictions on than murder cases. And I said, why? And he says, well, and depending on the type of murder case. He says, because it's easy to pick a jury where no one has ever murdered anybody. But most jurors that you select, the law of averages and probability, you're striking 12 people, right? You're putting 12 people on there. Most people who've ever had alcohol in their lives have probably gotten behind the wheel of a car, maybe in college or in their 20s, when they shouldn't have. And so people can relate to what it's like to be, charged with a DUI. They can't relate to what it is to be charged with murder because we just can't relate to it.
Yeah.
And that is the fear that I had, that the jurors could not relate to that. But you remember Alec, and this is pure speculation. We never made this argument, but it's not a far leap. This is a guy who said that he was taking 60 opioid pills a day at one time. Now, do I personally believe he was taking 60 opioid pills? I don't think it's possible.
He'd be dead.
Yeah, you would think he'd be dead.
There's no dosage amount of opiates that you can take. You can't take 60 even light milligram dosage amounts without dying. Yeah. But he was taking massive amounts of opiates for a decade. Who's to say that doesn't impair your judgment and your thinking and your rationale and your reason in your brain? It has to have an impact on your brain. And even Judge Newman kind of tipped his hat to this idea that I don't think you murdered your wife and son, but maybe the monster that you became is what did it. Yeah. And again, that's an inference I'm making as a person. You can make your own inferences, but it is hard to make the leap. But you don't have to go far to find people who have murdered their children for less.
Well, the defense never went down that path of incapacity, though, right? I mean, they never even played with that idea. I don't think, did they? Did I miss that?
No. That was never a part of their theory. No. We're talking outside of the courtroom, and I'm helping people understand. You can draw your own conclusions on the evidence that was presented. Yeah. But a guy that's been abusing opioid drugs at that level, at some level, for over a decade. It's not implausible that it affected his judgment. It's not affected that he had a snap, that his reason had been compromised. But with that being said, evil exists. People do evil things. Susan Smith, Exhibit A, people do evil things to their children. And from what I've heard, we have not spoken to the jurors yet. We intend to talk to them at some point. But from the interviews that I've heard, that never really weighed on the jury. Yeah. The interviews that I've heard from national news outlets and other local news outlets, the financial crimes wasn't an issue for them. The leap to murdering your child in a brutal fashion wasn't the issue for them. They really focused on the murder and the night of and the timeline and the big lie. And of course, there was other evidence besides his half-truths and his outright lies. There was obviously, blood on the shotgun, blood in the steering wheel in the car that he was driving that night. I mean, there were other pieces there was the fact that, we're not talking about this, but, one of the family guns was used to murder Maggie. And the reason we know this is because they were able to take the shells found around Maggie's body that had been used to kill her. They were ejected from the ejection port of a 300 blackout rifle. They were able to look at those microscopically and compare those to shells that were shot up by the house in the flower bed outside the gun room, which witnesses said, yeah, we used to shoot from there to zero the rifles. And they were able to determine that the same gun was used because once you chamber a bullet, there's microscopic tool markings on the metal in the ejection port that mark that round, that shell. And so you're talking about a family gun was used to murder Maggie. So the defense's theory at one time was that the shooters had to be between 5'2" and 5'4". This is the witness that I put up, and that there had to be two. And we can talk about that if you want, but this is what I ask people you have to believe. You have to believe that someone had someone not a family member, had an intimate knowledge of a 1,700-acre farm, knew the difference between where the house was and where the kennels were. They were 1,200 feet apart, okay? They went there. They didn't use their own gun. They used a rifle that belonged to a family to murder at least Maggie, okay? And they knew when Paul and Maggie would be there and when Alec wouldn't be there, because Paul and Maggie weren't living there at that time. They were asked earlier that day to be there by Alec, and he actually denied that at the time, that he didn't know why they were there, at least why Maggie was there. So the things that you have to disbelieve or discount in order to get to the defense's theory are just insurmountable in my opinion.
Yeah, so there are theories that begin to make sense, but you can certainly unravel them with for instance, the two guns that were used. Let's back up and let's talk about one of those theories. So sure. One of those theories, I think Dick actually mentioned it. Captain Inglis.
He did.
Dick mentioned one of their theories was that, Paul clearly. How you say, Paul Black Sheep, I guess. Had issues. Let's just say he had lots of issues, and he probably had made some enemies. And by the way, so had Alec. How can you deny that, right? But Dick says Paul had made enemies at some point in time, enemies that Paul knew that had been on the plantation at some point in time. And waited for them, and Alec gets in his golf cart, drives the 1,200 or 1,500 feet in the 3 minutes back to the house, and Paul's ex-friend, person that he had made enemies with, walks up, shoots him in the head with the shotgun, picks up the 300 blackout that Paul had in his truck, laying there, and shoots Maggie as she's running away in the back, and. This was never, he says this theory, this idea was never disproven, to which I think I responded, yeah, but why, how is it that you walk up without a gun, pick up the shotgun that happens to be laying there, the family shotgun that happens to be laying there, kill Paul, and then pick up the other 300 blackout that happens to be laying there, killing Maggie without any kind of a response? And I don't think there's been a response to that. But that is a theory one, right? Theory two was Alec had made enemies, clearly. Let's say cartel, okay? This one's the one that you hear in the community a lot. He's stolen from the cartel at some point in time. And the cartel murders two of his family members and says, you say anything, you talk about us, we're going to kill the rest of your family. So clearly theories, I could also come up with a theory that aliens or Elvis did it. But clearly theories that are out there in the community that people are talking about. So how do you've probably heard these. How do you respond to these?
Well, again, at no point from the night of the murders all the way until the trial was Alec concerned for Buster's safety. Buster wasn't even the first of several calls that he made. He actually called Rogan Gibson, who was the last person to be talking to Paul alive. He called Rogan several times, never was able to reach him that night, which I found was very interesting.
You mean Roro?
Roro, yeah. Roro, all the nicknames from this trial, but
Yeah.
he was more interested in calling Rogan and talking to Rogan that night than he was his own son. And if the cartel or bandits, come to the kennels to kill Paul because of a grievance they had with him, and kill his mother because she was happened to be there, or it was the cartel killing them to send a message to Alec. Alec never once seemed concerned for Buster's safety. In fact, Buster drove down that night. He didn't yell to Buster to stay.
Yeah.
And of course, when obviously the Salkehatchie road site shootings on September the 4th happened, we now know that was a lie, but he was never concerned for Buster's safety when he was saying someone shot him in the head. It was all about pouring into a narrative that this is all related. In fact, he was purposefully mentioning the boat case. He mentioned the boat case that night when Deputy Green rolled up from Colleton County. He mentioned the boat case to the SLED agents in the car. Several hours later, he mentioned the boat case in the second interview on June 10th and again on August the 11th. He was always focused. He was always trying to steer people to there, but he was never concerned about anyone in his family. In fact, Marion Proctor, Maggie's sister, took the stand and even testified to that Alec never seemed to be worried about anyone else in the family. He was, more concerned about steering people to this idea that this is someone from the community upset about the boat case. And so to me, that doesn't fit.
Okay. So that fits your description of a narcissistic sociopath. What did you call him? Family killer?
Family killer.
Family annihilator.
Family annihilator. Okay. So you mentioned the what's the guy's name that tried to hit the cousin that shot Alec?
Cousin Eddie?
Yeah, there you go,
Cousin Eddie.
How could I forget, right? Cousin Eddie. Yeah. So you mentioned him. This thing with him has always sort of intrigued me too. So a lot of people thought this was a big giant ruse. The fact that he was trying to, quote unquote, kill himself, and where's this insurance money going to go? Yada yada yada. To which I've always responded. If I was going to try to fake my death, I certainly wouldn't rely on a guy to shoot me in the head, right? I mean, that doesn't make any – I think there was a genuine trial of a suicide or suicide by somebody else. Otherwise, the bullet wouldn't have grazed his skull.
Well, you're assuming it was a bullet graze.
Well, I guess that's true, right? I mean –
And I'm not going to go into things that didn't come out in trial. But there are a lot of assumptions about that day on the roadside that weren't part of our trial and things that I can't go into because there are other open cases that are pending. But there are a lot of assumptions people are making about that probably create a lot of questions for them. And I can't answer those questions at this time. But what I can say is there are a lot of assumptions that people are making when they think about that roadside shooting that just aren't so.
Okay, well that's interesting. So I won't talk about that if that's an open case. But that is interesting, and I appreciate you steering me off of that. But while you mentioned other open cases, that my wife actually asked this question on the way home. She says, "Please ask Alan. Will there are probably dozens. I don't know. It could be hundreds of cases that could be brought against Alec after this trial. I mean, from financial stuff to even other criminal stuff. Certainly fraud. I mean, is the state knowing that he's going away for the rest of his life? Is the state going to continue to pursue these other cases? Is that a good use of the state's dollar? It's a genuine question, friendly question.
No. These are your questions are fair,
yeah.
And I've answered them before. And I'm happy to answer them on your podcast.
Okay.
First off, I believe every indictment against Alec Murdaugh I have personally signed, and I believe there are 17 outstanding indictments comprising 99 individual charges or counts against Alec Murdaugh for the financial crimes that he's committed. That that we all heard about during the trial.
Okay.
What I would say to people is this: every victim of every crime deserves to have their day in court, regardless of the legal status of the defendant that harmed them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to us that Alec was not in that has got 2 consecutive life sentences. What matters to us is those victims are harmed, and if Alec doesn't want to own those in guilty pleas, then the state is going to pursue those charges in some particular fashion. But also remember, as you know, and we think we think that is the altruistic position, but there's also a practical reason we're going to pursue these. Alec has got 2 consecutive life sentences. We believe the record is sound. Obviously, the defense team is going to file their appeals and their PCRs. This thing is going to be challenged. We're going to defend it all as far as it'll go. We feel confident that the 4 convictions will stand. But hypothetically, if they were to be thrown out, one of the things that we would like to have as a fail-safe is the ability to get him convicted on serious charges, which would basically be a stopgap. In other words, if we can get him life without parole on the financial charges, irrespective of what happened in the murder case. So if something were to happen legally in the legal system, we feel like him being held accountable in court on those financial crimes would be a stopgap to any potential appeal on the murder charges.
Is that possible time-wise for him to have life without parole on the financial side?
Yeah, 3 strikes.
Okay.
Those are all serious offenses.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, that's interesting. I think a lot of people would want to know that, right? I mean, they probably haven't dealt, people listening to this probably haven't dealt in this criminal realm before, and there's a genuine question. Why would you want to pursue him anymore if he's already there? I mean, isn't that costing the state money? Well, you've answered it I think that's a very fair and thorough answer. I appreciate that. So without getting into your strategy or certainly any confidential information being held within your department right now, can you discuss any of the appeal, any strategy on the appeal that would not threaten the case?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's been a notice of intent to appeal filed, and we're going to respond to those when when his appeal is fully filed. I mean, there really is no strategy other than that we're going to respond in our pleadings, and we're going to defend the work product of the case that we put forth. I mean, they're going to challenge a lot of things. They're going to challenge, not to get all lawyerly, but you would know 404B, 404.3, relevance, other crimes and bad acts evidence. They're going to appeal on all of those things. They've said it publicly, and they're going to attack the law enforcement officials. But again, we believe Judge Newman ran a very, very good trial, that he did everything he could to protect the record, and we feel like we're going to be able to provide a vigorous defense of our work product, and that these convictions will be upheld.
Yeah. There's been this sort of nagging theme throughout this trial that you've got a guy that certainly was a figure, lack of a better word, a figure in this community.
I wouldn't call him a pillar.
Well, no, I was trying to avoid pillar, right?
Yeah.
Figure. I think, Alan, you said he's sort of.
And what I was saying is, in his mind,
yeah.
himself as a pillar of the community, and that was all coming to an end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's this idea, and from the very beginning of this, there was quite a few lawyers, including myself, that were saying, how in the world does he? Really, how does he get a fair trial anywhere? I mean, it's such a challenge to find a person not living under a rock, right? That hasn't. I mean, I know heard about the trial is not the standard, right? And whether or not you could judge the case in a fair and impartial way would be closer to the standard. But still, I mean, from the very beginning, such a heavily publicized case. How did y'all deal with it? I mean, you kept the venue right where it was. Seems like in the hottest from a whatever military or police perspective, right there where he came from with his name, as you said. He thinks he's the pillar of community down there. I mean, that is epicenter for difficult to find a fair and impartial juror, at least in my mind. But you did it. I mean, how did you get past that?
Well, I mean, here's the difficulty I've had, or I should say my agency has had, but I've certainly had it from the day one, from the moment we got the first Murdaugh case. If you recall, the boat case, that was conflicted out of the 14th Circuit, the boat case involving the death of Mallory Beach. Mm-hmm. We got that case, and we were accused of giving Paul Murdaugh At the time, he was the defendant in that case, which, we ended up indicting. I assigned his indictment for boating under the influence resulting in death, which is a 1 to 25-year offense. But people criticized us on how he was booked and how the timing of the bond hearings and how he was being handled, because he was receiving special treatment. And then, of course, everyone questioned the year leading up to the murder trial. Everyone questioned whether Alec Murdaugh would even be convicted in that community because of their standing in the community. So people have gone from, there's no way he's going to be convicted. Look at how his son was treated, even notwithstanding the fact that we were prosecuting Paul Murdaugh at the time, to, he can't get a fair trial because of where he is. It's like the pendulum has swung. There is no world that I can live in where people think we've done it the right way.
Well, that's not the angle that I was taking, and I appreciate that argument, but that wasn't really the angle I was taking. The angle I was taking was, I feel like the pendulum has shifted. It's almost like they smelled blood in the water, I guess is the better way to put that. You had a community maybe that wasn't enamored with a guy, but maybe was victimized by a guy for the last 100 years and his family for the last 100 years, and maybe ready to extract some vengeance. Did you any sense of that?
Well, look, there's a jury voir dire process, an extensive jury voir dire process, when the prosecution and the defense are allowed to, at a molecular level, go into the lives of every single jury member in the jury pool. I saw the reams and reams, the thousands upon thousands of pages where the hundreds of people that showed up to be selected for that jury service, we had copies of, their social media history. We had their criminal rap sheets. We had where they worked, who they were related to. They were questioned extensively, and the defense had an opportunity to question them. The state had an opportunity to question them. And every single one of them made a decision that they could be an impartial witness.
Yeah. Sure.
Stephen, we could basically go back behind every single trial, not just the big ones like this, but just the regular run-of-the-mill trials. And you can go back and say, there's all these potential gaps in the justice system. There's all these potential things that could have happened or might have happened because it's created, by human beings, and we're all inherently flawed. But this is what I tell people, and I kind of rip off a quote from Winston Churchill, who once famously said, democracy is the worst form of government except for every other kind. I would say that we have the worst criminal justice system in the world except for every other kind.
Yeah.
Is there a better system? Is there a better way to take the humanity out of humans and make a perfect system? We have checks, we have rules, we have transparency, we have the public openness of the whole court process. That's what we have. So the system, in my opinion, works as well as any system can work that is created by human beings. But you can always go back and second guess and say, could it have been better? Anybody can do that about anything.
Yeah, no, I think no, you're exactly right. I think we've got the best system. It is inherently flawed, and people do have inherent biases, but I can't think of a better way to do it, honestly. And that's probably because I'm steeped in the system myself, and as are you. But certainly, it works, and when it doesn't work, it's usually recognized and corrected. And so, there have been a lot of people that have been proven innocent, not guilty, but proven innocent by the Justice Project and the DNA. What's the name of that project, Alan? The DNA guys.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Look, I'll be the first to say our system has incarcerated innocent people,
sure, yeah,
and let guilty people off.
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson, Exhibit A. But
yeah,
again, there's no better system in the world that I can think of.
That's right.
For meting out justice.
That's right. There isn't a better system. If we get it 98% right, the 2% is too much, honestly. The 1% is too much, honestly, but it is the best system we got. And
Stephen, you're an attorney, and you know this better than anybody. I mean, the burden is on the state.
Yeah.
We have to prove every element of every crime to every single member of the jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
All the defense has to do is prove one element of one crime to one juror out of the 12, and the jury is hung.
Yeah, yeah, and not specific to this case, but I always tell people, yeah, that's true. I mean, but people truly have a hard time understanding what reasonable doubt is. Like, is that enough doubt? Is this enough doubt? And and of course, depends on what side of the aisle you're on at the time. I mean, you and I are kind of people that could switch sides at any particular moment and argue for the best ability of our client. But people sitting on a juror, normal people sitting on a juror, not steeped in this, have a real hard time grasping what reasonable doubt is, I believe, and because it's not an easy concept to grasp. And so it's not an enviable position to sit in as a juror, to sit over, the life or death.
We argue to jurors that you're allowed to have doubt when you're finding someone guilty. The law doesn't require you to say, it doesn't say beyond all doubt,
right,
or beyond any doubt.
Yeah.
It says beyond a reasonable doubt, because there are very few things in this world we all know with any 100% certainty, and the law doesn't put a more stringent standard on us than that. So you're allowed to have doubt. It's kind of like, taking a picture of the Mona Lisa, as Creighton did. And I've used it when I was prosecuting cases full time. I would take the Statue of Liberty and tear the picture in half. I would tell the jurors, that's a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Half the picture's missing, but can you complete the other half in your mind with the information you have?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we're asking of the jury.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's putting it good right there. I like that.
Yeah. Well, what did I not ask you? What should we know that that we don't know?
Well, and I don't, I hate giving you a difficult question to ask me on your podcast, but I do think it's important. People have asked me, why not the death penalty?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I read some ridiculous thing online somewhere where someone says it was because of who he was or because of his race.
Yeah.
I just got through reading that earlier.
Certainly not. Yeah. Certainly
and
not.
that is the most horrific, despicable thing that anyone could say. What I would tell people is, when you're considering the death penalty, there's a lot of factors, both legal and logistical factors, that you have to consider when you're thinking about pursuing the death penalty. Now, I would ask people to consider this. The death penalty could add anywhere from a week to 2 weeks on to the end of any trial. We were already 6 weeks long.
And millions of dollars, by the way.
Yes, you also fund the defense's case.
Yeah.
Also, the efficacy of the death penalty. I don't know when the last person was executed in South Carolina, but I believe it's been over a decade. And it usually takes 20 to 30 years to execute someone when you have a functioning death penalty system, which we don't currently have because it's under appeal.
Yeah.
So then you also have to consider the wishes of the victim's family. This is a very unique situation when, this case, the victim's family was the defendant's family.
Right.
And, when you're asking for the death penalty, the thing the court has to weigh in its consideration is their wishes. And when obviously we didn't want to put the family in a worse position than they were, especially when some of them were going to be testifying for the state. So there's a lot of factors that we look at that go beyond whether or not just someone deserves to die for a crime that they've committed. There's a lot of other factors. And when you weigh them all, we feel personally, putting Alec Murdaugh in prison for life without parole is a fate worse than death, in my opinion, for him.
Yeah, and that's
kind of ultimately what played out.
No, I mean, you made a great point. The victim here, the living victim here, is Buster, and like it or not, and God, I mean, how right now it seems like he's still standing by his dad. So if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as the state and the prosecution, we got to consider his wishes, right? And that's a super interesting position to be in. And I think that's a very compelling argument, and I appreciate you clearing that up, because that has been some questions.
Yep.
I've heard that question at least a dozen times in the last week.
I was asked, why was I there? And I tell people, the Attorney General presides over the largest prosecution agency in the state, 300 employees, 90 lawyers. The largest solicitor's office is less than half that. We handle 8,000 cases, not to mention all the national and statewide issues that pop up on policy and law and politics that goes with the job. Why were you there? And so I'm happy to provided in your podcast my background on that.
Yeah.
When this case became a national and international spectacle, if you want to call it that, the sensationalism behind it, I realized that, while I had assigned the cases to the prosecution team leader and the other members of the team, it was my name on the indictments. It was my office's reputation. And I felt like no other case was going to garner more media attention, not in a good way. Obviously, a lot of people thought this case was going to go the other way. And I wanted my staff to know that I was going to put my neck out there and that I was going to go and live in a hotel for 6 weeks away from my family, and working 16, 17, 18-hour days, just in very austere conditions. And the hotel was very nice, but the lifestyle was not.
Yeah.
And I felt that they needed to see me there.
Yeah.
They need to know that I was never going to ask them to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. And then, of course, I went there to be a support. I didn't go there to lead the case, although I was responsible for its ultimate outcome. I went there to support the people I had the utmost faith in. And so I basically was acting as a staff attorney for 5 weeks of the trial, and even took on a state's witness just to help the team out so that people could catch their breath and get ready for the closing summation. So, for me, that was my reason. That was my contribution to the war effort. And that's the answer I've given to people as to why I was there.
Yeah, and I think that's great, right? I mean, you got to lead by example. You got to put yourself in the fight, and that's you and I served together in the National Guard as well, and we, you clearly are taking a page right out of the book of military leadership, and that's great.
Yeah, you want to hear something interesting? One of our listeners, brother's murderer, was one of the last 4 people put to death in South Carolina by lethal injection.
Do you know who it was?
I don't know the murderer's name, but I can tell you the story. He was murdered. He was murdered in 5 Points area in Columbia. Last name was Montgomery. The victim, his brother David, is a good friend of mine. Lives in Camden and a loyal listener to the podcast. But we in conversation did have the discussion of whether I thought there was a potential, and he thought that there was a potential for death penalty.
Yeah, we didn't really get into it a whole lot, but one of the things that people don't understand, I hear this all the time from constituents.
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper. Put a bullet in their head, and I mean, yeah, sure. If we were living in medieval times, maybe that would be cheaper and easier. But the truth is, 21 years on average to kill somebody, and $1.5 million more expensive to kill somebody than it is to put them in prison for life without parole.
That's crazy.
I mean, it is. It's unfortunate, but that's reality. I mean, that's the system we live in. We have to operate within that system. I mean, that it truly ensures your rights, your constitutional rights are defended. If, God forbid, you were ever charged with a crime and you were not guilty of that crime, I would certainly want those protections. Everybody's always standing on this side of the aisle, and if God forbid you ever are the 1% on the other side of the aisle and you're not guilty, you want those protections. That's what our founding fathers put them there for.
Amen.
Well, and I remind people, the state is the same as the king. Our system of, our common law comes from England, back from the days of King John and the Magna Carta. Yeah. And, we are now the sovereign, whether it's the U.S. government or the state government. And at the end of the day, the burden is always going to be on the sovereign, and you want heavy strings on us. Yeah. You want to mire us down to make it difficult for us to deprive people of their life, their liberty, or their property. That is what you want as a citizen, and that is a burden that I, as a member of the government, that I welcome and think is appropriate. Yeah. And so, everyone's for law and order, and they're all for individual liberty. But then you see people go out there and argue against it just because of the heat of the moment and the passions that they're feeling and the emotions that they're feeling.
Yeah.
Alec Murdaugh, as reprehensible as he is and as what an evil act he committed, the reason he's entitled to all of those presumptions of innocence and all of the privileges that go with our criminal justice system is because there are people out there who may one day be charged with a crime they did not commit. The reason that the police don't go in your house at night and rummage through your sock drawers is, as anything that they find that's violative of your rights is going to be suppressed in court because it's fruit of the poisonous tree. And the worst of us, the most heinous people in society that go through the criminal justice system, they get the benefits of all the protections designed to protect the law-abiding citizens as well.
Yeah. And thank God for that, right? I mean, thank God for
Yes.
that. And thank God for, honestly, Alan, for people like you that understand that, because there are quite a few people in government that don't. And so hats off to you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. I've told you I'd keep you 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know we went over, but I want to tell you too that your wife Jennifer, I saw your real boss lady. She'll continue in our prayers, but I did see that she got to ring the bell back in February.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
excellent.
so during the trial, that was another thing that was going on in the background. Jennifer was enduring her last treatment, chemotherapy, and then a few weeks later during the trial, she got to ring the bell. She is now cancer-free, and obviously on the back end of this horrible year that she's gone through.
Yeah.
And the entire time I was gone, she was dealing with 2 teenagers, and you guys know what that's like.
Yep.
So all credit to her. And giving me the ability to go out there and do my job and be out there with my people. So to all the spouses out there that let their first responders and their soldiers and their prosecutor husbands and wives go out there and do their jobs, thank you. And I also want to say thank you to our team, because it was a difficult, not just 6 weeks, it was a difficult year and a half. And I just want to say I got a great staff. I love them. I'm so grateful that they're with us, and the law enforcement folks that were part of this case. I mean, like, my faith never wavered, but I feel so vindicated that we did our jobs and justice prevailed.
Well, Alan, you do a great job. Your team does a great job. We are appreciative of your service.
4 terms.
And honestly, look, I mean, some people don't know this, but y'all are a heck of a talented team that could honestly leave government tomorrow and go make 3, 4, 5 times your salary.
Easily.
Do not say that around my wife, please.
No
Don't
joke.
say that around her.
No joke, right? I mean, trust me, the legislature does the same to me. But no, I mean, honestly, I mean, really talented lawyers, including you, and we appreciate your service, because you don't do it for the money. You don't do it for the, for the whatever, for the cheers, because a lot of times there are no cheers, right? I mean, you do it, you're right. I mean, for years there could be no cheers, and so thank you so much,
and thank you for your service to this country through the Army as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I love it, and now serving with Stephen Goldfinch in the National Guard, it's been an absolute dream.
I'm so sorry.
Stephen's been listen. To be able to walk away from a law practice for several months to do what he did, Stephen, my hat's off to you, man, for your service as well. I've enjoyed serving in the Guard with you and some of the finest people I know I've met through my military service.
Yeah. Me, same here. I mean, you're really a great network of people, and you just can't ask for better people that are willing to sort of lay everything down and go and serve. And I'm about to pick up in June, as you know, Alan, and I'm going on deployment in June, and going to lay it down until January, and then I'll be back in session again. And so I'm looking forward to spending some good time with some good people that I've that serve this country. And we are going to in all ways, shape, and form, try to serve our country to the best of our abilities. And I know you've done that. You've been deployed, once or twice?
I did a year and a day.
A year and a day. Iraq or Afghanistan? I can't remember which.
I was in Iraq.
He was in Iraq.
Gotcha. Okay. And so,
and I'm still serving. So it's hard to believe that's coming up on 20 years.
And you're at NGB now, right?
And for those listening to the podcast, that's National Guard Bureau in Washington. Right. But I'm still serving, and hopefully got a couple more years left in me.
He's got the big bird on his shoulders. He's the big man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the big man, full bird colonel, and we're proud of him. He's doing great things. And
well, how about the Attorney General stuff? How many? Is there a limit on terms for that?
Well, so interesting fun fact. When I was elected in 2010 and took office in 2011, I was the youngest Attorney General in the country.
I remember
at the age
that.
of 37. Yep. And then I found out in January that I am now the longest serving attorney general in the country.
Oh, really?
At
Wow.
12 years and change.
How about that?
But I'm still one of the, I think, 3 or 4 youngest
Huh.
attorneys general.
Seriously?
So, yeah, but there is no term limit.
Great.
For AG in our
Great.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. We'd like to keep you there.
We'd love
You're
to
stuck
see you.
with me for 4 years at a minimum, unless the public wants to throw me out or something, or God has other plans for me, like getting hit by a bus. But you got me till for 4 years.
All right, good deal. Well, thanks, Alan. Appreciate you taking time on a Saturday to talk
Absolutely.
to us.
Thank you so much. Next time you're down at the inlet, we didn't get to hang out the last time, but next time you're down, we won't be doing a podcast. We can all go get something to eat and grab.
We're going to
a eat.
Murraugh's Inlet, and we're going to get some seafood. All right.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
See you.
All right, buddy. All right, man. That was great.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. You know, I was wondering like how much we could actually go into with him, or how much differently it would go versus last week, and hands down, way better.
So-
I mean, really.
So yeah, it's always a challenge for me to interview lawyers right
Well,
after.
because you won't ask certain questions you know you can't ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge. Lawyers that just coming off of trial, I got so many questions, and everybody has questions, right? But I know the questions that they're not going to want to answer, and so I don't even like to ask them and put them on the spot. And so it's a little bit frustrating, you know, because the conversation you would have in private's not the same conversation I could have here, unfortunately. But I hope what we did was relevant and helpful and entertaining, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
All right, so
I
well,
enjoyed
I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot since we're recording right now. But I'm taking all this stuff with me to where I'm going.
Yeah.
And Captain Eddie that I fished with last year, y'all got there the next day. I'd already fished with him.
Yep.
Wants to talk about some of the things that are going on Lake Okeechobee down there.
Okay.
And so I'm going to bring it all down there and see if I can't get episode something. We're going to call it 51 and a half. I'm not going to call it episode 52 because we're saving 52 for us to do.
Yeah.
But we're going to get a podcast down there. And I can't wait to get down there. And I've got it set up now on Tuesday this week to make a trip down to Lake Ida to go try and catch a peacock bass.
Oh, good.
So we're going to go down there, and up in the air on the turkey hunting thing. We may just go try to maybe shoot a hog with that new Trilogy custom AR that I got.
Which is sweet.
Yes, it is very sweet. Your dad has done an incredible job on it. And
You ought to take a pack or two of those Z-Man sitting right in front of you and go down to Lake Okeechobee and see if you can catch a bass.
Well, we're going bass fishing Monday. I got a charter taking Russ. We're going with Captain Eddie again, but Lucas, me, Russ, and we're going to take little Eddie with us.
Good.
We're going to go catch bass for an hour or so with live bait, and then we're going to go to crappie, and they're killing the crappie down there. So that's better for the kids. They'll like that more than bass fishing.
Yeah, they will.
So we're going to do that, and then be back next week. But what else was I going to say?
I was going to
Congrats on your new lures that you won
Oh, thank you so much.
last weekend. Captain Ed's custom offshore rigs, a bucket full.
25
Yeah.
rigs, and they're somewhere between sea witches and islanders. I mean, there's some have some lead heads, some no lead heads, but it looks like fluorocarbon leader to me. I mean, I looked at it. There's no.
He claims mono. He claimed he'll do custom fluoro for people, but he claimed it was mono. But I let him know you won. He was super excited.
Yeah, 25, and so
That's a lot.
I mean, altogether, I would guess that's $500.
I would say his rate now is somewhere between $9 and $11. I heard $9 and $11, and I think that all depends on the weight of the skirt or the head there. But
all rigged out already. I mean, with the
You're ready to
mono,
go.
with the hooks, with the lead, with the nose, with everything. I mean, they're ready to pull that. They're ready to put on your 50Y and roll. And so, super excited to win that at the CCA banquet. That was good. And we also have a box of Z-Man sitting in front of you, which is a sponsor of the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo. And
while we were sitting here, I had actually two people text about weighing fish today. But yes, we do have a nice package of Z-Man tackle here. And, once you get done picking out what you want, then we're going to come up, and we'll get us a package set up for a giveaway for the rodeo, and we may just add it into the grand prize drawing as one of the options, and hold it around. But some great stuff. I mean, saltwater and freshwater stuff in there.
Yeah.
But we'll get that in there, and you can get in the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo. Also, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. Click on the logo and get signed up and start fishing today. Start weighing today because everybody else is doing it. It seems to be pretty cool. I've got today I've got a crappie getting weighed, which I don't think is going to be big enough to beat the one that's leading. And it looks like I've got a catfish getting weighed today. So
I was doing a little bass fishing earlier this morning with the kids out at the farm, and I had a watermelon colored worm rigged weedless with a white belly, and I threw it first cast. You know what I caught? I caught something big first cast.
A mudfish.
Alligator.
No way. Oh gosh, only you.
Cypress Pond.
If they only knew what they were doing.
Cypress Pond. By the time I saw the alligator surface by the line, and then I started reeling fast to try, and he just when I reeled fast, it even got him more spun up, and he just attacked that bait, ate that worm, and anyway, thankfully he wasn't very big. I was able to get him to the shore without breaking the line and unhook him and get him all unhooked. But we got some good pictures with the kids and the dog.
Well, my boss lady is blowing me up because she has everything sitting in the garage ready to put in my truck because we've got to go drive for 9 hours.
Wrap it up.
So we're going to get out of here. But listen, go to TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. Check out all our brands. Make sure you click, like, and subscribe to this, please. Share it with all your friends. Another great episode. Thank you to Healthy Cell for coming on board. We look forward next couple weeks and telling you a little bit more about them. But I'm going to hit the road, head down to Florida. We're going to have a great podcast down there. But follow us on social media. We'll get some good pictures up of what's going on. And once again, next week, we'll be back talking fins, fur, and feathers here on Trilogy Outdoors.
Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also, don't forget our other brands, Southern English Radio Show and Walk 'Em All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.